Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 305, The Startling Sableye. The episode begins with Ash and the gang spending yet another day on the inlet, since Ash couldn't find a better place to train. But right now they weren't training, they were just relaxing, with Brock preparing some sandwiches on a picnic table for lunch, while May, Max, and Ash, along with all of their Pokemon, including Brock's Lotad, Fortress, and Mudkip, May's Torchic and new Beautyfly, and Ash's Corphish, Trico, Tailo, and Pikachu, were all crowding around Brock, just fucking eagerly awaiting these awesome sandwiches, hungrily staring at all the ingredients. Ash was so starving that he couldn't help but ask what kind of sandwiches Brock was making, leading Brock to just tell Ash to wait up, explaining that they would be ready soon. He just needed to be patient, and he would be surprised. Brock then noticed that Corphish seemed especially eager to eat, as it was sitting under the table, taking a particular interest in the ingredients. So, Brock decided that Corphish would probably like to help him, so he asked, clarifying that he needed help with the side dish, a salad, and Corphish responded by happily nodding and jumping onto the table, ready to help, as Brock instructed Corphish to start by cutting the vegetables. Corphish obliged by cutting a root vegetable perfectly, and almost instantly to boot, making Ash and the gang impressed, as once this vegetable was completely cut up, it got out its pincer and started slicing some onions into onion powder. As Ash complimented Corphish's great slicing skills, it then made its way over to the sandwiches, wanting to slice them up, and obviously this alarmed Ash and the gang, as they all warned Corphish not to slice the sandwiches up. But it was too late, as Corphish was very determined to slice them, mistaking the sandwiches for more vegetables, as it sliced them up into little bits, which Ash commented looked like mashed potatoes, making everyone depressed as fuck, while Corphish was pleased, jumping around happily that it was able to help out Ash and the gang. So, Brock, even though he obviously didn't want to have the rest of the gang enjoy his food in this form, nervously told Ash and the gang to dig in, hoping that it would still be good. So, everyone sat on the grass and ate their chopped up sandwiches with a spoon, remarking that this meal was not very fucking good, because since it was in so many chopped pieces, you could barely taste anything. This made Ash and the gang immensely depressed while they ate their meal, as Ash scolded Corphish for fucking doing what it did, stating that the bad-tasting sandwiches were all its fault, and that Corphish should at least feel bad about what he did, stating that he would forgive Corphish if it at least apologized. However, Corphish was oblivious to Ash and the gang's displeasure, or the fact that it had actually done anything wrong, as it just snapped its pincers and jumped up and down happily, thinking that it had helped still. Max then commented that although Corphish definitely didn't seem at all sad due to how happy it appeared, and it obviously didn't seem upset at itself for destroying Ash and the gang's meal, he came to the conclusion that Corphish usually didn't know that it was doing anything bad, because it wanted to help out, it thought that it was helping out, but it wasn't. Ash agreed with this, sighing in annoyance, realizing that he had to try and fix Corphish's obliviousness to basically anything. He had to try and basically make Corphish smarter, so it was able to understand, human emotion, or just emotion in general. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they had just arrived at an abandoned mine, and James looked in the map in his guidebook of the area to find out that they were actually near a former gold mine, but there hadn't been gold there for years. It hadn't produced any for fucking a long time. Jesse and Meowth doubted that there truly was no gold left in the gold mine, though, suggesting that there could have been an area inside that wasn't even discovered. And they both were immensely excited by the prospect of getting rich after selling all of this gold, as Jesse had a daydream of herself sitting on a mountain of gold, particularly gold bricks, and declared that they all had to go and check it out to see if there was any gold left, confident that there was. James, though, was very skeptical of there being secret gold that hadn't been found yet, since he figured that after many years of the mine being abandoned, people would have found out by now if there was more gold left in the mine, and there obviously wasn't if it had stayed abandoned for all this time, and also stated his belief that abandoned mines were usually very dangerous. Jesse and Meowth simply replied that the danger was worth it, because there could be some awesome gold on the other side, but James was still reluctant, until, however, Jesse reminded James that if they had enough gold, they would never have to worry about money again, not just because they had a whole bunch of gold, but also because they could give a part of the gold to Giovanni, and Giovanni would be so happy with this that he would give Team Rocket a promotion, which would in turn earn them even more money. And Wobbuffet was happy with this as well, as he forcibly popped out of Jesse's Pokeball. James was finally convinced, wanting that goddamn promotion, so Team Rocket all happily cheered, declaring that they were going to go search the abandoned mine, walking extremely quietly, as it fit with the creepy aura of the place. Soon enough, they found a mining cart, and Jesse told James and Meowth to get inside, with her going in the front and Wobbuffet going in the back, and Meowth and James going in the middle. They rode around in the cart for a while, but as they looked in all directions, they couldn't find any trace of gold, making Jesse depressed. Although James was confident that the gold simply had to be further down the mine, so they went deeper and deeper and deeper, as everyone became increasingly nervous by the increasing darkness in the mine. As there was less lights, the further down you went. It eventually got practically pitch black, and Meowth began to complain about how dark and creepy it was, but Jesse, even though she was nervous as well, told Meowth to put his fear of the dark aside, since they had to focus on finding gold. Meowth was about to rebuttal that they couldn't find any gold in the pure darkness to annoy Jesse, but Wobbuffet annoyed Jesse first, as it tried to go into the front seat, only to be pushed away by Jesse. As the minecart continues on through the pitch-black darkness, the Team Rocket eventually spots two sparkling dots of light up ahead, making them wonder aloud what it was. Their curiosity and slight nervousness soon turned into pure fear, though, when they saw a toothy grin in the distance, just above the two dots. Team Rocket then came to the conclusion that that had to be a creature smiling at them, and they were completely terrified. and started to scream, with Jesse demanding James to pull the brake on the minecart, and he did so very fast. Although the motion from this caused Meowth to go flying out of the minecart and onto the track, in front of the cart. Just then, the smiling figure gets closer, moving at a rapid pace, which caused Team Rocket to get even more scared, as Jesse demanded that James go backwards, so he put the minecart in reverse, and it sped away, leaving Meowth behind. Meowth notices this as he gets up and freaks out at the fact that Jesse and James were leaving him behind, but taking Wobbuffet with them, as he yells at them for them to come back, but by the time he got back up, the minecart was already well in the distance, so his calls were futile. To make matters worse, Meowth then turned around and saw that the creature was now crawling above him, and soon jumped down to stare him in the face. Meowth then gets startled as the creature lets out a scream, and Meowth decides to run the fuck away as fast as he could, but he trips, and knocks himself out in the process. The creature, which was revealed to be a Sableye, a Hoenn Pokemon, went up to Meowth and tried to wake him up, poking at him twice, but Meowth stays knocked out, confusing the Sableye as it scratched his head, because it was trying to greet Meowth, it wasn't trying to scare him, and now he was passed out. Meanwhile, back with Jesse, James, and Wobbuffet, they had rode the cart out of the mine. And now that they were relaxed about not being chased by that creature anymore, they took the time to look inside their cart and saw that Meowth wasn't in there, making Jessie confused as she asked James where Meowth could have went, and this makes James and Jessie finally realize what had happened with Meowth falling out of the cart, and feared that Meowth may have been killed by the creature, but held out a bit of hope that this wasn't the case, as they decided to be heroic for once and go back into the mine to save Meowth. However, Jessie then hears Ash's voice, and soon see that Ash and the gang happen to be coming to the mine now, likely searching for a new place to train. Upon seeing Ash and the gang approaching, Jesse and James ditched their heroics immediately and ran away out of the minecart, away from Ash and the gang, with Wobbuffet falling before being able to follow after them, because he was so clumsy and scared. Anyways, as Ash and the gang approached the mine, Max assured everyone that this place apparently used to be a real gold mine. May doubted this, so she asked Max to check the Pokénav to be sure, but Max admitted that May would just have to trust him, since the Pokénav didn't have any information on it at all, since it was currently abandoned, and the Pokénav was only capable of showing current locations and their current status. As Ash and the gang further examine the entrance to the mine, they all come to the conclusion, especially Brock, that it was definitely abandoned for a very, very long time. Despite this, Ash eagerly stated that he still wanted to check out the inside, but before he went in, he saw a button on the wall, and he pressed it, hoping that it would do something beneficial, and it certainly did, as it turned on a row of lights inside of the mine. So, Team Rocket could have just turned these on the entire time, and they wouldn't have been scared. Damn. May and Brock didn't really see the point in going in an abandoned mine, and asked Ash if he really wanted to go in there, with Ash confirming, leading Brock and May to ask why, with Ash reasoning that, for one, going into an abandoned mine would be an awesome way to test their courage. May and Brock weren't really convinced by this, seeing no reason to test their courage, but Ash clarified that it would be a good way to test Corefish's courage, explaining that he planned to use the mine to his advantage, to put a scare into Corefish, so that it would calm down and stop being so hyper, so it would stop doing stuff like uncontrollably, like cutting up all those sandwiches, and it would only do stuff when Ash ordered it to. May and Brock were skeptical that Ash could use a fucking mine to scare Corefish, and debated on the ethics of scaring Corefish, but May and Brock soon agreed to come in with Ash into the mine, once Ash had whispered his plan to scare Corefish to them, whispering in the odd chance of Corefish actually being able to hear the plan from its Pokeball, with May remarking that she thought that Ash's plan may actually work, and she asked Max if he planned on coming too, with Max confirming obviously, because he was one of the people who was first eager to go in. Meanwhile, it was revealed that Jesse and James hadn't actually run all the way away, as they were hiding behind some crates, and could hear Ash whisper his plan to Brock and May, which showed how they weren't actually far from them at all. Upon hearing Ash and the gang's plan to go into the mine, James suggested that even though Ash and the gang were their enemies, that they should warn them about the ghost in the mine, or at least what they believed was a ghost, the Sableye. Wobbuffet then forcibly popped out its Pokeball to show that it agreed with James and was still terrified of the ghost, though Jesse and James quickly plugged Wobbuffet's mouth to stop it from yelling and alerting anyone. Jesse then angrily recalled Wobbuffet and told James that she disagreed with his idea. She didn't see the point in warning Ash and the gang when they could instead use Ash and the gang going into the mine as a way to steal Pikachu. James asked how them going into the mine would help them steal Pikachu, leading Jesse to clarify that Ash and the gang would be super scared and distracted by how dark the mine was, and also with the mine being dark, it would make it easier for Team Rocket to sneak up and steal Pikachu. So, James agreed. Anyways, now, May and Max had just taken the minecart into the mine to go through with their part of Ash's plan. Max asked May what the fuck they were even doing, though, because he wasn't aware of Ash's plan, leading May to clarify that all that they'd been instructed to do was dress up as ghosts so that they could scare Corfish, and May then got a white sheet that she had somehow had in her backpack and brought into the minecart with her, and gave it to Max for him to put on, and put on her half of the sheet, because basically her and Max were going to be under this same sheet, acting as one ghost. Max did as he was told, though admitted that he wasn't sure this plan made any sense, or would work. Meanwhile, we then see the mine control room where Meowth was still passed out, but suddenly he wakes up with Sableye standing over him, and he immediately sees that this was likely the ghost that he was trying to run from earlier. And he obviously becomes frightened, quickly claiming that he'd do anything to not get hurt by the Sableye. But when he fully registers that the ghost was in fact a Sableye, he realized that he likely wasn't in that much danger, since it was a Pokemon and not a ghost. And Sableye confirmed this, stating that it liked to scare humans and did not mean any harm to other Pokemon, which Meowth was able to translate, saying it in a human language to himself, but also for the audience, so they knew. Breaking the fourth wall a little bit, eh? Sableye then wants to prove that it meant no harm by saying that it had food for Meowth, and eats some himself first to make Meowth believe that it was in fact food. So Meowth eagerly accepts the food from Sableye, although when he bites it, even though he was very hungry and hadn't eaten all day, he had to spit it the fuck out because he was screaming in pain, as it was a rock. Sableye then laughs at the little trick it just played on Meowth, stating that it had sharp teeth, so it could bite into the rock, but Meowth couldn't. Meowth gets pissed off at Sableye's laughter, remarking that it wasn't that funny that Meowth almost broke the soft teeth that he had. This leads Sableye to admit that it was just lonely and wanted some company, and it thought that pulling a prank on Meowth would actually be funny and would encourage him to stay. This led Meowth to question where they were even staying anyways, as he didn't appear to be in the mine anymore, leading Sableye to clarify that they were in fact in the mine's control room, its home. Meowth then looks around the room and notices several surveillance cameras, with one of them showing May and Max in the minecart, huddled in the white sheet. Sableye then looked up to the monitors as well, and saw May and Max and got excited, explaining that he liked to play tricks on people who entered the mine for fun, just like how it had done to him and Jesse and James, and invites Meowth to come scare May and Max with him. And Meowth obviously agrees, because he had an idea. He was gonna use Sableye to help him capture Ash and the Gang's Pokemon for Jesse and James. However, Meowth quickly changed his plan, remembering how Jesse and James had abandoned him, so he decided to put himself first, and decided still to join Sableye, in hopes that along the way to scare Ash and the Gang, he would find a whole bunch of gold and be able to claim it for himself, without having to share it with Jesse and James, so he could give it to Giovanni by himself and get a promotion before them. Meanwhile, Ash had begun walking into the mine, hoping that May and Max had done their part. As he then arrived at the minecart, and unbeknownst to him, May and Max had done their part, as they were hiding behind the minecart, waiting to jump out and scare Corphish. Anyways, Ash sent out his Corphish, and Corphish instantly raised its pincers, preparing for battle, as that's usually what happened when it was sent out, but Ash assured Corphish that it wouldn't be battling this time, and they would instead be testing its courage, which made Corphish disappointed. Even when Ash told it that this would be done to train for his upcoming rematch against Brawly. Seeing Corphish's bad attitude, Ash told it to watch its attitude, informing it that there were ghosts that were known to appear in the mine, and they could punish him if he had a bad attitude. Corphish barely understood what Ash was even saying, but he decided to follow Ash as he walked closer to the minecart, when suddenly May made a ghostly laugh, leading Ash to warn Corphish that it sounded like there was a ghost watching him right now, which really frightened Corphish as it moved its pincers in all directions, preparing to defend itself. Just then, May whispered to Max to make sure his part of the sheet stayed on, and Max got on May's shoulders, and they jumped out from behind the minecart, disguising themselves as a ghost. And the ghost, quote-unquote, approached Corphish, making Corphish get more and more frightened as it came closer, practically paralyzed, unable to move with fear, although it tried to get Ash to help it out, only to hear Ash simply chuckle to himself that his plan was working, which terrifies Corphish that maybe Ash didn't know about the ghost or was in on it or something. Ash's plan actually didn't work, though, as it went entirely wrong when Corphish got so scared that it panicked and tackled the ghost, or what it thought was a ghost, which knocked off the cloth, revealing that the ghost was actually just May and Max inside the minecart, as Max then fell off of May's shoulders, and they tumbled into the minecart, after May had tripped. At first, Corphish thought that the ghost had merely disappeared and disintegrated into the cart or some shit, but he soon realized that May and Max were in fact tricking him and disguising themselves as ghosts, and he got so mad at this that he went up to the minecart and tackled it, sending it flying down the track, and therefore sends May and Max deeper into the mine. Corphish didn't intend for this to happen. It intended to damage the minecart so that Max and May actually couldn't use it to escape, so that he could attack them some more. So Corphish angrily ran after the cart to get May and Max, leaving Ash to try and chase after Corphish, telling it to stop running, claiming that they were just testing its courage. And that's why he played a trick on it, basically explaining that he pulled a trick on it for its own good, but Corphish ignored Ash's pleas for it to come back, so Ash was forced to continue chasing. Meanwhile, as for May and Max, who were still rolling down in the minecart, now extremely deep into the mine, Max sarcastically asked May if their experience was a real blast, referring to how they got fucking blasted off pretty much by Corphish. May was too shocked at what Corphish did to even react to Max's sarcasm, stating that she didn't know that Corphish would attack them, regretting that they perhaps scared Corphish a little too much. Although admitting that Corphish must have been very gullible to believe that May and Max were ghosts, as a fucking white sheet was a classic fake ghost disguise. Just then, May was interrupted, as May and Max both heard a sound, which was Sableye's laughter, followed by none other than Sableye appearing on the back of their minecart, pulling it to a stop. Suddenly, May and Max turn around to see the Sableye on the back of their minecart, and scream in fear, as Sableye then reveals its sharp teeth. Sableye then jumps up onto the ceiling and hangs onto it, which makes Max be able to more clearly see its whole body, which enables him to identify it as a Sableye, which calms May down a bit as she scans Sableye with her Pokedex, realizing that Sableye wasn't a goddamn ghost. Max then suggested that Sableye would make a pretty strong Pokemon for May's team due to it being a ghost type, and suggests that she capture it, although May was still angry at the Sableye for scaring her and Max for no real reason, so she didn't really feel like capturing it, just fucking teaching it a lesson, and Max agreed that he was fine with this, since he just wanted to see a battle right now, so May sent out her Torchic and orders it to teach Sableye a lesson by using Ember, although Sableye dodged the attack by crawling on the ceiling and then jumped down to use Lick on Torchic, which caused Torchic to get confused and dizzy, which made May confused, not knowing what to do in a situation like this, so she decided to give up and recall Torchic back to its Pokeball. As Sableye laughed at Torchic's failure and May's incompetence, just as Meowth showed up behind him, commending Sableye on its good job of defeating Torchic. Max then questioned Meowth what the fuck he was doing here, as he wasn't with the rest of Team Rocket, leading Meowth to clarify that he and Sableye, who he called his new friend, were playing tricks, and he proceeded to play yet another trick that he really wanted to on May and Max, as he pressed a button on a remote that he was holding, which caused a net to fall over May and Max, a drop net that he had placed already in the mine. May and Max obviously demanded to be let out, but Meowth and Sableye just laughed. Meanwhile, as for Ash and Corphish, Corphish saw that May and Max were already long gone, and he couldn't catch up to the minecart, so he just decided to angrily head back to the entrance as Ash chased after him, and they eventually came outside to where Brock was waiting. And Ash told Brock about everything that had happened, explaining how Corphish found out that May and Max were pretending to be ghosts, and fell further down the mine in the minecart, basically saying, yeah, the plan kinda got fucked up, and Brock knew this for sure, as he saw that Corphish still looked relatively confused and pissed off, which was a bit different between its usual confused and happy state, but it was still confused nonetheless. Brock and Ash then wait for a while, thinking that May and Max would eventually find their way out of the mine, but after a while, they both realized that May and Max still hadn't emerged, so Brock declared that they had to go find them, and Ash agreed. As Brock and Ash entered the mine, Meowth and Sableye had returned to the control room, now tying May and Max's net to the ceiling of the control room, when they suddenly noticed Ash and Brock entering the mine on one of the screens in the room. Meowth was eager to scare Ash and Brock, so it asked Sableye if it was ready for more scaring, and Sableye agreed, though only under the condition that Meowth would continue to stay, so that he wouldn't be lonely ever again. He did want to scare Ash and Brock, but he wanted to see if he could get the benefit of Meowth's constant friendship. And sure enough, Meowth, really wanting to scare Ash and Brock, assured Sableye that they were not only friends, but best of friends, and he would continue to stay even after they scared Ash and Brock, so they could have fun scaring even more people. Sableye was pleased with this, so he and Meowth left to frighten Ash and Brock, leaving Max and May hanging from the ceiling in the net, as May questions how the fuck Meowth and Sableye were best friends when they had just met, leading Max to state his belief that it seemed as though Meowth was tricking Sableye into making Sableye believe that they were best friends and they were scaring for fun, when in reality, Meowth must have just wanted some help to deal with Ash and the gang. Max then suggested that they find a way to break out of this net and help out Sableye, to inform it of Meowth's trickery. Meanwhile, Ash, Brock, Pikachu, and Corphish were looking for May and Max, with Corphish still angry, only joining the search for May and Max so that it could punish them for tricking it. Ash was annoyed with Corphish still being mad, despite Ash's whole plan being to make Corphish listen to him, and he asked Corphish how long it was going to stay mad, reminding it that, if anything, it should feel bad for partially causing May and Max's disappearances, leading Brock to comment to Ash that he probably shouldn't have said that to Corphish, as now Corphish just seemed even angrier. Ash and Brock noticed a moving minecart heading towards them, leading Ash to suggest that maybe May and Max were still inside. Corphish was scared of the minecart, fearing that May and Max may try and scare it again if it was inside of it, but then the minecart suddenly stopped, allowing Ash and Brock to check for May and Max inside, but they were disappointed to find it empty. It was then revealed that this moving minecart was sent as a distraction by Sableye, since now that Ash was distracted by checking the minecart, it allowed Sableye to sneak up behind him and lick the back of Ash's neck, lowering itself from the ceiling where it was hiding to do so. Ash was obviously startled by this, so he turned around to see who the culprit was, only for Sableye to have went back up to the ceiling to hide again, leaving Ash confused, as there was seemingly no culprit, so he asked if Pikachu was the one who licked the back of his neck, but Pikachu denied this by shaking its head. This just leaves Ash even more fucking confused, when suddenly Ash and Brock hear a voice and hurriedly try to locate its source, frightened for where the voice may have came from. Ash, when he couldn't find anything, asked Brock if maybe the noise was just in his head, but Brock assured Ash that this wasn't the case, as he heard the noise as well, and stated his belief that he had the weirdest feeling someone was watching them, when suddenly Sableye lowered itself from the ceiling again, and startled Brock as he licked the back of his neck as well. Both Ash and Brock then get even more scared, as the Sableye lets out a laugh of joy upon scaring Brock. Just then, Meowth, in a black suit disguise, comes behind Corphish and slaps him with a fan, and then quickly disappears, so when Corphish turned around to find the attacker, he didn't find anyone. So, it angrily started to flex its pincers as Ash was questioning Brock as to what he thought was watching them, now coming to the conclusion that there had to be something watching them because of the laughter. Ash then noticed Corphish flexing its pincers, looking very angry at him, so Ash questioned why Corphish was so mad, as Corphish just continued to look extremely angry and tackled Ash to the ground. Ash was shocked, as well as somewhat angered himself by Corphish's behavior, as he asked Corphish what the fuck he did that for, as Corphish simply just flexed its pincers again, threatening to attack Ash for a second time. Pikachu didn't want this to happen though, as it jumped in front of Ash to defend Ash, but Corphish simply hit Pikachu instead with its pincers, knocking him aside, confusing everyone even more, even Brock, as to why Corphish was acting this way, as Brock ordered Corphish to cut it the fuck out. Meanwhile, May and Max, still captured in the net, were watching everything happen between Ash, Pikachu, and Corphish on one of the room's monitors. The control room's monitors, rather. and they both felt as though they should do something, as Max was worried that Corfish could seriously injure Ash and Pikachu, although they couldn't think of anything to help since they were captured. But suddenly, May got an idea to free her and Max, as she sent out her Torchic and commanded it to free her and Max by using an ember. However, upon coming out of the Pokeball, Torchic still appeared to be scared, as well as still paralyzed from the lick. Basically, it was still fucked up from its previous encounter with Sableye, which Max realized. Despite this, May knew that her and Max getting free was very important, so she gently pleaded for Torchic to use any energy it had left to use Ember to free her and Max from the net. It does so, making May and Max fall to the ground. May then thanks Torchic for powering through despite its injuries, and assures it that she wouldn't call it out again, and it could now go back to resting in its Pokeball as she recalls it. Max then reminds May that not only did Ash and Pikachu have to worry about Corfish, but they had to worry about Meowth and Sableye as well, so this just made them rush even faster than they would have before to where Ash and Brock were, outside of the control room. Just as Max had feared, the conflict with Corfish had escalated to the point where Pikachu felt the need to defend itself, attacking Corfish back with a Thunderbolt. Corfish simply dodged and used Bubble Beam though, but Pikachu was able to jump over the Bubble Beam. Both Corfish and Pikachu happened to be getting tired out from this, so they simply just stared at each other angrily as Pikachu's cheeks continued to spark, indicating that it was trying its best to fire up another Thunderbolt. This led Ash to command both Pikachu and Corfish to stop fighting, because he wanted all of his Pokemon to get along as usual. And he hoped that he could just resolve things with Corfish with words. Suddenly, Meowth showed up and fired a net to capture both Corfish and Pikachu. Ash and Brock couldn't see Meowth, so they questioned who the fuck would have captured the two Pokemon, when suddenly Meowth laughs evilly, revealing himself in his black costume as he rips it off and Sableye appears beside him, introducing Sableye as his new best friend, confusing Ash and Brock as to why Meowth was working with a Sableye instead of Jesse and James. Ash quickly put that question aside, though, and remembered that he had more important matters at hand, which was to free Pikachu and Corfish, as he demanded Meowth and Sableye to let them go, but Meowth just laughed when suddenly May and Max rolled in on a minecart that they had somehow acquired on their way from the control room. May quickly yells at Sableye, warning it not to help Meowth, as Sableye just cocks its head, confused, leaving May to clarify that Meowth wasn't Sableye's friend like he said he was, and he wasn't just trying to trick everyone for fun like Sableye was, as she explained that Meowth belonged to Team Rocket, and that Meowth was probably planning to give Sableye to his Team Rocket pals, Jesse and James, when Sableye had helped him catch Corfish and Pikachu. Sableye didn't know whether May could be trusted, so it turned to Meowth, asking if May's accusations were true, leading Meowth to attempt to defend himself as quick as possible, stating that May was lying, and ordering Sableye to bring him Pikachu and Corfish in their nets and deal with May, Max, Ash, and Brock. Sableye was now conflicted, though. It didn't know whether to trust Meowth or May, as it didn't know either of them that well, and it simply held its head in its hands out of pure confusion, stressing the fuck out. Just then, everyone heard none other than Jessie's voice, as she was stating how she had just saw Meowth and commanded James to head towards them. Since they couldn't actually see Jessie, Meowth, Sableye, and Ash and the gang all looked around to find the source of the voice, with Ash wondering who it was, as he still couldn't see anyone. But suddenly, Jessie and James came into view, riding another minecart as they did their motto. Then, Jessie and James realized that Meowth had captured Pikachu and Corfish, and congratulate Meowth on his great work, believing that Meowth captured Pikachu and Corfish for them, as Jessie then grabbed the net with Pikachu and Corfish in it and put it inside the minecart. Upon seeing this, Sableye obviously realizes that May was telling the truth, and that Meowth was really working for his friends at Team Rocket, and angrily glared at Meowth, threatening to attack him. Meowth, scared, stated that the jig was up, trying to play it off as though Meowth was just, happily going back with his teammates. He had no ill will towards Sableye or nothing, because he didn't want Sableye to be mad, as Meowth then hopped back into the minecart with Jesse and James. Even though his initial plan was to get some gold for himself, he realized that he would rather be with Team Rocket than teamed up with Sableye, so if he had to choose one of those, he'd rather go back with Jesse and James. Anyways, with Pikachu and Corfish in their grasp, Team Rocket made their getaway as they reversed the minecart and sped away, leaving Sableye behind as it still was angry as fuck, literally jumping up and down, fuming at Meowth's betrayal. Ash wasn't going to let Team Rocket get away though, so he sent out his Tailo and ordered it to attack Team Rocket, as Tailo managed to catch up to them and pecked at Jessie's hair, making her angry because she loved her hair, and she got so angry that she threw out a smoke bomb, which was actually just a regular bomb that released smoke as well. But James advised against this because he knew the damage that it could cause to the mine, and therefore the damage that it could cause to Team Rocket. But Jessie threw the bomb anyways, and it sent their cart flying backwards, and causes the ceiling of the mine to crack, which causes a rock fall, worrying Ash and the gang immensely. But thankfully, just as the ceiling started coming down, Sableye, knowing the way out of the mine, pointed to a direction inside the mine and told them to follow. And since Ash and the gang had no other option, they decided to trust the Sableye and follow after it, assuming that it obviously wasn't in cahoots with Team Rocket anymore after what had happened. Meanwhile, Team Rocket had made it safely outside of the mine, although their minecart had crashed into a rock outside, causing them to land on their asses, extremely beat up from the fall. Jessie then remarks how close of a call that was and how they almost died, but James reminds Jessie that she was the one who almost caused their death in the first place by throwing the bomb. Jessie just tells James to shut up though, as she directs his attention to the now destroyed mine, stating that there's no way Ash and the gang could have survived, so at least James should be grateful for that, because now their enemies were fucking gone. Meowth wasn't happy about this though, because he was too worried about Sableye. stating that he did kind of consider Sableye his friend after the first scare that they did together, and he kind of felt bad for tricking Sableye. James then angrily says to Jesse that he wasn't happy that Ash and the gang died, even though they were their enemies. He didn't want to fucking kill kids. He just wanted to steal their Pokemon. Wow, I guess James did have a bit of standards. And upon hearing this, it was revealed that Jesse actually had some standards as well, as she began to feel bad about Ash and the gang's death. And Jesse and James argued about whose fault it was that Ash and the gang were dead, neither of them wanting to take the blame. Just then, Corphish and Pikachu spot Ash and the gang having arrived at the top of the mine. Basically, Sableye had took them to a secret exit that it knew, and it took them basically to the back of the mine, and this allowed them to basically go onto a cliff, and then when the mine was destroyed, they were able to then go to the rubble. Yeah, basically, Ash and the gang were safe. That's what mattered, and they instantly assured Team Rocket that it wasn't either Jesse or James's fault, it was both of their faults, and Meowth's. Pikachu called out to Ash, obviously excited to see him, and even Corphish called out to Ash, realizing that he would much rather be with Ash than with Team Rocket, even if Ash kind of annoyed him recently. Team Rocket were immensely shocked that Ash and the gang were still alive, although they were kind of relieved, and as for Meowth, he was primarily relieved that Sableye was alright as well, as Sableye had arrived with Ash and the gang, obviously. Ash snaps Jesse and James out of their shock, as he yells that, yes, Ash and the gang were safe, but once again, it was all Team Rocket's fault that they almost weren't safe. And he adds that they were only safe because Sableye had joined their side and helped them. Jesse and James were kind of confused at this, because due to Meowth's happiness to see Sableye safe, they thought that Meowth and Sableye were still working together, but this led Meowth to explain the whole trickery that he pulled on it, shocking even Jesse and James at Meowth's cunning. Just then, Sableye angrily yells at Team Rocket, and James requests Meowth to translate since they obviously couldn't understand Sableye's yells, and Meowth reveals that Sableye was very angry at its home, the mine, now being destroyed, in addition to being betrayed by Meowth, and wanted revenge. Ash, having heard Meowth's translation, now knew that Sableye wanted revenge, so he was like, yo, Sableye, help us out by freeing Corphish and Pikachu. And Sableye obliged, as it leaped down from the destroyed mine that he and Ash and the gang were standing on, and used Fury Swipes on the net, freeing Pikachu and Corphish. With Pikachu and Corphish freed, Ash ordered Pikachu to use Iron Tail and Corphish to use Crab Hammer, which sent Team Rocket flying back, and then Sableye sent Team Rocket blasting off as it caused an explosion with its Nightshade attack. With Team Rocket gone, Ash remarks that he was glad they were all reunited and safe, and he, Brock, May, and Max all thanked Sableye, as did Pikachu and Corphish, thanking it immensely for freeing them. And Sableye responds by shaking Corphish's and Pikachu's hands, surprising Ash and the gang, as they realized that Corphish didn't act super hyper upon being thanked or anything. So they realized that maybe if Corphish was like, really thankful and really focused on the person who thanked it, then it could control itself and not go super insane all the time. Ash and the gang then observed the destroyed mine and wondered where Sableye would go now that its home was destroyed. However, Sableye seemed to have gotten over its home being destroyed already, as it set off climbing up the nearby hill to go find a new home, but not before turning back and waving goodbye to Ash and the gang, as Ash and the gang waved goodbye back, as well as Corphish and Pikachu, obviously. The episode then ends with Sableye walking off into the distance atop the hill, and leaving Ash and the gang hoping that they would someday see the Sableye, their new friend, yet again. Although they most definitely wouldn't, because he's a character of the day.